Hi, I'm Michelle Chalfant, psychotherapist, holistic life coach, and human just like you, learning to navigate life's challenges. With over 25 years experience, I teach people how to get healthy using the adult chair model. The adult chair model is where simple psychology meets grounded spirituality, and it teaches us how to become healthy adults. From anxiety and depression to codependency and relationship issues, you can use the adult chair for just about anything. Each week, I share practical tips, tools, and advice from myself and a wide range of experts on how to get unstuck, how to live authentically, and how to truly love yourself, all while sitting in your adult chair. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. All right, so welcome to the show, Michelle Farris.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast, Michelle. And you have a great name.
Oh, you have the best name, I have to say, too. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to hear that. You and I are like, again, soul sisters. We have a lot in common. We have very similar missions, it sounds like, from what you and I were just talking about. So both of us have lived or walked the walk of codependency.
Yes. And live to tell the tale.
And we live to tell the tale. And tell everyone ahead of time, before we even jump in, Michelle, does the journey ever end?
Nope.
But
it gets easier.
It does. Yes, ma'am. Amen to that. It does get easier. Right. So there is a reason for getting on that journey, right?
That's right. And sometimes, when we hit a major road bump, I always remember that there's going to be a huge gift on the other side of that. Yeah. And there always is. Ooh. So, we just have to trust the process.
That's real. I like that. Thank you. I like that a lot. So where do you want to start? I'm thinking to myself, as a fellow recovering codependent woman, would you like to tell us a little bit about your story? And then how did you become this fabulous psychotherapist, anger management specialist? Tell us.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Tell us your story. I like to hear, I love talking to people and hearing their stories. So tell us just a little bit about you and your own journey of codependency and anger.
Yeah. Well, so I grew up with someone who raged. And I was also codependent from a very little age. I didn't know how to make friends as a kid. So literally I cut out pictures of the Charlie's Angels and gave them to boys in hopes that they would like me.
Oh,
I know, because I had no idea how to be a friend.
Wow.
I didn't get taught that. So, and couple that with growing up with someone who raged, I thought, well, I'm never going to be angry. Thank you very much. So I immediately stuffed it and thought that was the solution. I thought, as long as I'm not angry, I will be a nice person. I will be liked and everything will be all good, until I hit my early 30s and realized, oh, wow, if you don't have your anger, then you're really not authentic in relationship. And that caused a lot of problems.
Now, wait a minute. How did that happen that you suddenly realized, wait a minute, I need my anger? Like, where did that come from?
Because I noticed that as a codependent, we stuff, right? So I would be in my friendships, and I did this more with women. I didn't do it in my romantic relationships because I always felt safer with men. But
so did women, I. Isn't that interesting?
That funny? Yeah.
Huh. That's a whole other topic. I wonder what that is. Well, men it seems to be easier. They were easier for me. Less emotion. I'm like, I had so much emotion at home. It's like men were just a little steadier for me. But I mean, I had good girlfriends. But anyway, sorry. I don't want to go off topic.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
No, I totally
never met anyone. I loved my guy friends. They were just solid. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. So where was I? Oh, so for me, like if you hurt my feelings, I would just stuff it. Right.
Yeah.
But if I had some long-term girlfriends and I would stuff. And then one day I finally realized, okay, I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to say they hurt my feelings. And I planned it. I was in recovery for a while already. So I wrote it down. I did all the right things. But the one thing I didn't do was I started talking to her. And then because I unleashed it, all this resentment came out.
Okay.
And she felt attacked. It didn't go well. And I walked away thinking, I did great.
Yeah.
It didn't dawn on me that I overloaded her because all that hurt was never said. And then I took the one opportunity to just vomit everything, and that made me realize, oh, wow, I need to cough this stuff up as it's happening and not wait for years.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. So then you said in your codependency recovery when that had happened. I got it.
Yeah. Okay. And that was before I became a therapist. Well,
interesting.
Yeah.
Tell us, and I know we were just talking on my show on the Adult Chair podcast. I have done a few podcasts on codependency. It's really I think it's a favorite topic of mine because I walked this walk and I want to give people hope. And that's why I wanted to have you on too, like give us hope. But let's talk about, in case people have not heard of these previous podcasts that I've done, talk about how would someone even know that they're codependent? Like, what are the signs? Like, what can people kind of self-reflect about? Like, oh, wait, I'm doing that. What's that?
Right. Well, you and I are so similar. So part of how I define it is it's that over focus on helping, giving, or controlling other people. And then of course we lose ourselves in the process because instead of having a sense of self, we learn to trust others with everything. And actually, I think codependents tend to either not trust at all or they blindly trust. I blindly trusted. But then we never take our own counsel. So we never are on solid ground. Yeah. So we're always chasing that next person to feel worthy. And that's just a painful way to live.
Yeah. But you know what? I didn't know that that's what I was doing. And I realized when I speak with clients over all these years, I would use, by the way, I don't like labels. I say this, I don't like labels, but it does. What I say to do is, okay, it helps us to understand and put a framework around how we're showing up in the world. Once you have that understanding, throw the label away and work on living in your adult chair, because that's the healthiest version of ourselves. So at least you know what you're doing and stop doing that. Like start working on not doing that. So tell us again, what if someone is, again, they don't know. So what are very clear signs? Like give us some examples, concrete examples.
So being a people pleaser, looking to others for approval, not being able to set boundaries, wanting to control everything around you in order to feel safe. You know, I mean, having the relationships, for me, my relationships became my lifeline. All my emotional eggs were in either one person's basket or all my friends' baskets. I didn't do any self-care. I didn't take my own feelings into account. So that focus on other people to survive emotionally is to me a huge one.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed for me was, and other people, and you might agree here, is the idea that someone might be mad at me.
Oh, yes.
I wanted to die. Like, I was like, oh, I remember like the ruminating thoughts, the obsessive thinking, I've got to fix this. Oh my God. And it really did. It felt like death inside. Like if I don't make sure that so-and-so is not mad at me, because they have not called me back. They've not texted me back. It's been X number of hours or days. They certainly are mad at me.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when you reach out to them, 9.9 out of 10 times they're like, oh my gosh, I missed your message. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, I've been in agony because I thought you were mad at me. That to me was, I knew when I started recovering, that got less. That total freaking devastation that I was going to die started just, you know what I mean? Like I was able to handle myself, and I would go into, this is what we do in the adult chair. It's like, well, what's fact and truth?
Yes.
I reached out to them. Okay. Right. They have not called me back. Okay. What else is fact and truth? Like, that's it. Like, the last time we spoke, we were laughing and had a great time. That's fact. Okay. What else?
Yeah.
That's about it. Like, and that would help me like, oh, okay, now I can wait. And then when they'd reach out to me, oh, no, I'm not mad. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Moving on.
Well, and that was huge self-care to just check it out instead of staying in your mind thinking, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? You actually say, hey, is this about me? And I think that's really helpful as a codependent, is to say, hey, just checking this out. Is this about me? Are you upset at all? And then if they say no, we're off the hook.
Yeah, I agree with you. Huge to gather that additional information. Okay. Give us your idea on how codependency happens. What happens to us when we're growing up?
Mm-hmm.
What is it?
Well, I think for me, what I saw was it's really about caregivers that can't be there emotionally. I mean, because nobody tells us how hard it is to raise kids. To me, that's
No.
like one of the biggest secrets. It's like we all have kids and we all assume everything is going to be great, but the emotional and mental energy it takes to raise kids. And back when I'm 53, so when I was growing up, they didn't have. Oh, that's awesome. You don't look it.
Thank you.
And my mom had Mr. Spock, Dr. Spock. That was
So
the
did
book she
my
had.
mom. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So there was no talk of self-care. There was no talk of self-esteem. It was let's survive.
Yep.
Let's get through the day.
Yep.
And of course, I learned that, you know what? I better be quiet. I better be good. So I learned really early, especially because one of my family members raged, I thought, I'm just not going to have my feelings. So I sucked it all in.
Yeah.
And that to me, I think was the start of my codependency. But I think I was a people pleaser anyway, just by nature. I just wanted to please and connect. But because I didn't have that self-esteem growing up, it's really hard to have a healthy life when you don't have that basis of yourself. And I'm so glad that now people, I think, are doing that more for their kids.
I think they're overdoing it, by the way.
Yeah, I agree. I think we swing in the other.
We swung a little bit too far in that other, we went from everyone in our, in their 50s and 40s and maybe even 30s has childhood emotional neglect, CEN, because our parents didn't validate us. Or I shouldn't say all. I'm not going to say all. Please don't email me. I'm not saying all. I'm not saying all, everybody. But I'm going to say this.
Yeah.
Parents, like you said, where the heck is the manual for raising children? My parents did not get that manual. Not sure where it is, but we had Dr. Spock. And Dr. Spock did not talk about the importance of validating children. Attachment theory. Yes, it started in the 70s, but I mean, it wasn't until the last 10 years that everyone started talking about attachment, secure attachment, disorganized it. So no one we didn't know to have our feelings validated. Most of us, our parents, if you're crying, they give you a cookie or said, stop crying. So that inner validation that children really need didn't happen. And now it seems like, it's in the other direction. It's over validation. And
that's true.
It's too much. It's like, I remember when both my kids played soccer and it's like every kid on the team or every single kid's getting a trophy here. Like, what the heck is that? Well, we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I'm like, but they didn't even, what? Like, I know. It's too much. And my kid's never wrong. And my kid's perfect. It's like, that's not healthy. It's like too much kid attention. It's too much focus. So I think there's a happy medium to that, but it is about raising healthy kids. A very important thing I think is validating those emotions. Like, I feel sad. Let's talk about that. How does that feel? How can I help you? What do you need? Not brushing it off, but not spending too much time on it either, because we want there to be some resilience. So anyway, okay. Gosh, we could go off on 4 different podcasts.
I know.
I'm just saying, I'm like, talk about childhood emotional neglect. Okay. So that's how it happens. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on was because I love that you marry anger and codependency. I love anger because I had a raging uncle. It was my dad's twin brother. So who was over all the time. We lived with him every summer. He felt like, my other dad. So I was raised with rage as well. And in my high school years, even some of my 20s, the rage would slip out. I didn't rage every single day. It wasn't anything like that. But when I would, what I noticed about my rage was there was no anger. I would go from 0 to rage. Like there wasn't that emotional containment of myself. I would be blobbing and exploding my anger all over everybody, and then I'd be done. So it was different than my uncles. So tell me about, and people that are codependent, anger does not exist.
That's right. That's right.
Right?
That's right. They will deny it.
No, they're going to deny it. So why is anger so difficult for people who are codependent? Let's start with that. Let's just start with that. Why is it so difficult for people to really touch their anger?
Well, most codependents are people pleasers, right?
Yeah.
So we think if we become angry, I think a lot of times we have really unhealthy view of anger. We see it as rage, we see it as abuse versus a healthy emotion to actually say, ouch, I'm hurt, or ouch, I'm upset. And it takes a lot of knowing yourself and to pay attention to your own experience and validate your own experience instead of saying, oh, you're too sensitive, Michelle.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not important enough. Don't bring it up. Be quiet. Because if you learn that growing up, then of course you're going to do that as an adult.
True.
So for the codependent, that's why I think we have to hit a bottom where we finally realize, oh my gosh, I have to say something. Or do something. I think sometimes codependents don't relate to anger, but they relate to resentment because they stuff it.
I was going to say, it's very quiet. It's a very quiet internal resentment.
Yes.
That's interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, because they expect, we give, at least when I did it. And then we hope they're going to give us back in the same way. And when they don't, we're pissed. But the problem is we never actually ask for what we want.
Right. Yeah.
And the codependent doesn't realize that. They think, well, shouldn't they know? They should know what I want based on everything I'm giving to them. Well, right. But that's expecting people to read our minds. And that's crazy making.
So true. So then how can someone that's codependent begin to feel their anger?
Well, I think it's, I love that mindfulness component of literally just feeling your body. Because I know when I start to get angry, my throat will close. It'll get super tight, or people get tight in the chest or their stomach. They might have a gut punch reaction.
Yes.
It's like, if you're just paying attention internally to what's happening, you'll get it. You might get off the phone and be really frustrated and you're pacing around doing a million things. But if you go, wait a minute, I'm just going to sit down with this feeling and ask myself what's going on, or do some writing. That's safe because nobody's going to know.
Right.
And just get in touch with what's going on, because I guarantee if I think that's what is scary for the codependent person, is that they think, well, if I'm angry, I have to admit it to someone else. That may not be the case yet. The first is admit it to yourself. I'm angry. When I first started doing that, it was really weird because I was like, ooh, I'm like not used to it. But it was also liberating because I realized I have a right to be upset. Now, I wasn't ready to talk to somebody else yet, but then eventually that's the next step is, okay, then how do you tell the other person, hey, you know what, when you didn't respond to my texts, I was really upset. And you make it be really specific, because that's the other part of healthy anger is about us and what we're feeling and what we do with that. But unhealthy anger is about blaming someone else. You're making me feel this way. Why are you doing what you're doing? Because if we're outwardly focused, right, I'm more upset.
Right.
But if I just say, well, Michelle, I'm really upset that you said X. I'm angry, but I'm not out of control because I'm really focused on my own experience. But if I'm focusing on what you did to me, I'm going to feel more out of control because I can't control what you just did or said.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that.
There's an element of lack of control that's, triggering.
It's so fascinating because when I work with people to feel their emotions, and specifically anger, but really any emotion, but because we're talking about anger, let's talk about anger. It's terrifying. It just, they think it's going to come up through them like a volcano and like their head's going to blow off. I'm like, it's not. So it seems like when people can just slow it down and really get in touch with it, that is so beneficial. And I like this, like not make it about the other person, but embrace it as your own and own it and let it rise up through you. And 90 seconds, it's over, man. Like, we're done. Like, let it up and through and we're done. But, I'm wondering, as a psychotherapist, have you had clients? Because I've had clients that have said, what if I throw up? I'm like, you're not going to throw up. What if I, pass out? I'm like, do you ever have that with clients? Like they get afraid if they have serious emotion. I'm like, I'll have clients like punch pillows. But have you ever had a client that threw up or passed out because of feeling an emotion? Right. And that's just, that part of us that's like terrified about it. And then when they're done, they're like, people are always like, wow, that wasn't so bad. I'm like, not really. No. What is healthy anger? What is healthy anger?
Healthy anger is us owning how we feel in the moment.
Okay.
Whether it's anger, annoyance, irritation, because sometimes we don't want to feel that. Oh, I don't want to be annoyed. God, I'm kind of embarrassed. I don't want to be an irritable bitch. I don't want to be, whatever we're telling ourselves versus what if it's okay? What if you can embrace that annoyance when it's a level 2 on the scale of 1 to 10, you're going to be able to manage it a lot faster than if you ignore it. And then by the time you get home, your wife has left a messy house and you're really upset. Now you're a 5. She says one thing wrong. Now you're a 10.
Right.
So it's that progression. But, the healthy anger is, you just own it. And you come from a place of, this is what I'm feeling. And the other thing is that we have to, with healthy anger, we have to take responsibility for how it starts. And how it starts is our thinking. Because there's, I'm sure you talk about self-talk, right? Mm-hmm. That inner dialogue inside our head that goes all the time. Mm-hmm. Well, what I noticed is there's 3 ways we do negative self-talk. It's either about ourselves. I'm doing it wrong. This is stupid. I shouldn't have said that. Or our partner, other people. Here we go again. They're a nag. I wish they would get off my back. They always pick on me. It's always about them, whatever we're saying, or in general about the world. Life is unfair. Nothing ever works out for me. And if we can catch that initial thought, that's the match that starts unhealthy anger.
True.
Is just that, here we go again. We're going to talk about the money and we're going to get in a huge fight, but nothing's actually happened yet. So it's like, if I can suspend that thought or catch that thought and go, well, wait a minute, I don't know what my husband's going to say next. I think I do, but every time I think I do, I make a negative assumption that creates more frustration and anger in me. Versus I'm just going to hear him out.
That's
and
true.
Then see what happens.
It's more living in the moment than living in the past or future and making stories and assumptions up about what may or may not happen.
Right. And to be fair, we all do that. I make assumptions all the time based on if I know you, your past behavior towards me, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't check it out.
Agree. I get that. I agree with you. How can you reverse unhealthy anger quickly? Like if you're in that spin of unhealthy anger. What?
Well, catching that thought is huge. And I think that first random thought we get, we're not going to be able to control that first thought. That first thought is going to be nasty. Let's just face it.
Yeah.
And that's not bad or wrong or no mark against us. But if I know, like one time I asked my husband to do some chores and he replied by doing this. And immediately in my head, I never said it, but in my head, I said, he's such a baby.
Yeah.
And I had a huge aha, like, oh my God. Because the minute I said he's such a baby, I was a 10.
Oh, wow.
And he did nothing. He sighed. But it was my interpretation of that sigh that got me so upset. So now when I even have a hint of wanting to call him a baby in my head, I know, nope, not going down that road. You know what? I have to either replace the self-talk and say, you know what? He's just having a bad day. Or, you know what? I need to take a walk. It's okay. I just need to not deal with this right now. But catching that first thought is huge for most people.
So true. Because man, we can go down hill very, very quickly if we don't catch that first thought, for sure. Right. How is stuffing anger a relationship problem?
Well, I think when we stuff our anger, we're really denying our own experience, right? And if you hurt my feelings and I never tell you, like I did with my girlfriend years ago, that is going to come out. And sometimes I know it can come out in an indirect way. Maybe I give you the silent treatment for a couple of days, hoping you're going to chase me.
Yes.
Or I might have a comment like, maybe you asked me to do something for you. And instead of saying yes, don't I always help you? So it's a real cutting, like I'm saying, yes, I'm going to help you, but my tone is not matching my intent, and,
Yeah.
and the other person feels crazy.
Uh-huh.
So, that's where it becomes a relationship issue, because most of the time, especially with indirect passive aggressive anger, the other person knows. They know, something's not right. But because my words don't match my behavior, they feel crazy. And
Okay.
it really sets up a cycle of, not really being able to work things out. And it creates separation, because then the other person might not want to deal with me, right? Because they
So
might go,
true.
God, she's too much work. She's not
So
saying what
true.
she means.
So true. So true. So how I'm trying to think of the journey that someone that's codependent would take with anger. Like, what's that journey? So it's about feeling their emotions for sure.
Right.
And if it's anger, what next? Like, what if I'm codependent and I realize, like, wow, I've got some anger. I'm
Yeah.
mad at you and I need to say something, but I don't know. I really want to sweep it under the carpet. I really want to be a people pleaser and not say anything, because that's that old programming.
Yeah.
But
Right.
how can someone really, I'm thinking about like their road to recovery. Like,
Right.
what's that path look like for somebody? Taking a step outside of making everything always okay. And,
Right.
yeah. What does that look like?
Well, I think you have to hit some emotional bottom to even get to the point to realize that, okay, I actually have to have my anger. I can't ignore it because it's causing too much stress internally or externally in my life. But then if, you can do things privately at first, right? You can take walks, you can write. I love journal writing because it gives them an uncensored version that they can do that doesn't hurt people. But then when they get to the point where they're finally ready to say something, what I started doing is I wrote a script. I did not trust myself enough in the moment to say, I'm hurt or I'm angry, because I was too afraid everything in their kitchen sink would come out.
Right.
So I'd literally keep it to like 2 or 3 sentences. Just write down, what is the upset? What's the concern that I have? They said this, they did this. And if you're really specific about communicating your anger, like, I'm upset that you didn't call me back last week. The other person's going to be like, oh, well, I actually didn't call you back last week, so I get it. But if I say something like, well, I'm really mad because you never support me. Well, what does that mean? Right? That's super vague. And the other person's going to say, of course I support you. And then you feel invalidated, and then you don't want to do it again.
Right.
But if you can specifically name the behavior that really bothered you, most of the time the other person is able to hear it, because as long as you don't say it as a judgment, they'll own it, because you're just naming what actually happened. So it's a much easier sell versus, well, I'm upset because you never treat me well. Well, again, vague, or you
Too
always,
vague. Yeah.
or you never.
Yeah. Way too vague. I like that. I think of anger as rocket fuel. Like, it really helps to push us forward in life.
Yeah.
It helps us to say the thing. It helps us to do the thing that we don't want to do. So, I mean, feel that anger, let that anger come through, but we don't want to explode it all over anybody. We just want to feel it and let it propel us forward. And it sounds like just set a really healthy boundary then.
Yeah.
With start doing that with other people. What else? Like, what was your recovery like for you? What was your journey like?
So, boy, it's so funny, because I've really been contemplating this more lately. Is the first, I don't know, 5 years, I was so focused on my recovery to try to get better relationships. And of course I was spinning my wheels. I mean, I was still recovering. I was still making progress. I was in Al-Anon and doing a bunch of stuff. I did one of John Bradshaw's first child workshops. Really cool. But it wasn't until I realized, holy cow, I have a part in this. And that was the turning point. And now looking back, I realize what I would have wanted was to start with the self-care and the self-trust. Because when I started doing that, that's what helped me pick better relationships. When I would really look at somebody and go, well, are they really compatible with me? Do they treat me well? Because I never asked those questions. I just went wham, bam into the relationship because I wanted to connect.
Right.
which is of course the addiction for the codependent is
Of
the other
course.
person.
Of course. Of course.
Right.
Of course. So if someone's listening to this, what would you advise them to do? Like, what's something they can start right away, like today?
Yeah, I would say start honoring your own feelings, even if you don't do anything. Like
Yeah.
if you feel frustrated, if you don't like something, if whatever it is, because that's how you grow our intuition, right?
Yeah.
Is to be, oh yeah, when I listen to my intuition, it grows.
Yeah.
And for the codependent, that's huge is, your perceptions aren't wrong. They've just been buried for a long time.
True.
And we kind of need to uncover, because starting with trying to improve other people is going to be a frustrating process. Doesn't mean you can't work on the relationships. It just means that if we don't get ourselves on solid footing first, like even some codependents, they don't even take care of themselves physically.
Right.
They're out of whack emotionally because they're not sleeping, or they're not eating well because they're, cooking meals for everybody else, but then they're not honoring their own dietary needs. I mean, it gets kind of messy.
Right. That's true.
Recovery is messy and there is no arrival.
Yeah. No, you never cross that finish line. I've tried. So they keep getting moved further away.
That's right.
It really is just a journey.
I think that's so important to validate for other people listening, because the first time I remember when I first entered recovery, I thought, when I get 10 years, I'm going to have it all together. And then I set the date for 20.
Yeah.
And then at 20, it was like, no. And then finally at 20, I realized, okay, I'm going to be in this forever and it's okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm not going to get better and make progress. It just means there's always going to be more lessons, and that's okay.
We were talking about Pia Melody before we started, and she always says, we are perfectly imperfect.
Yep.
And she's right. We are perfectly imperfect, and you don't ever cross a finish line and feel 100% healthy. And like, everything's gone. It's like, we are all a work in progress. So
right.
The thing you want to be doing is just making sure you're walking forward on your journey and really self-reflecting, self-care. It's so important. Watching thoughts, feeling emotions,
and getting
really
enough support.
Stuff. Yeah. Making sure you're getting support. For me, I found it really valuable to have somebody that could validate what was real for me. Like, hey, I had a friend of mine and I would call her and say, can I run something by you? Like, is this being codependent or caring? Like, am I being really caring?
Yeah.
Or am I being codependent right now? Okay. And she go, nope, that's codependent. Don't do that. Okay. Thank you. Is this caring? She go, yeah, that's care. Okay. And then eventually I started learning, because in my world, I was just being caring with everybody. I was a very thoughtful, caring person.
Right.
And my friends were like, no, you really go above and beyond there. Like, aren't you tired all the time? I'm like, yeah, I'm exhausted. They're like, that's codependency.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know. So anyway, great. Is there anything else you want to share about this codependent marriage with anger? I like this a lot, actually. Anything else?
Just to let them know, your listeners, that anger, it doesn't have to be bad.
No.
It really is. For me, it's a signal that something isn't right, whether inside of me or in my environment, because sometimes we're going along through our day and all of a sudden we're mad for no reason. And when that happens, I always check my thinking, because I probably just scared myself with something.
Yeah. That's a good point.
There's so much empowerment on the other side of healthy anger, because then you can set a boundary, like you said, or you can say, hey, this isn't okay, or I would rather do this, or
True.
I'm not going to go to the bar with you when you're drinking. I'm just going to hang out at home.
Yeah.
And that's how we take care of ourselves.
It's really turning that focus inward, because with codependency, we have such an outward focus of other, and we have to start looking inward, and it's not selfish. Can you please validate me?
Yes. I know.
It's not selfish to look inward. And as a codependent, but even people that are not codependent, they still have a hard time. They're like, isn't that selfish? No. Michelle, can you tell us the difference? Please help me. Please validate me right now, because I always say selfish is like you're at a party and you eat all the brownies and like there aren't any brownies up for any, like that's like selfish.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell us the difference.
That's right.
Why is self-care and self-love important?
Well, we're not going to have healthy relationships without it.
Mm-mm.
And if someone had told me that, I would have been a lot more motivated to do it in the beginning.
Yeah.
But I love your brownie example, because selfish is when we're not thinking of anyone else but ourselves. And that becomes a theme.
Yeah.
But to just say, no, this is what I want, or this is what I need, that's a negotiation relationship that you need to have, or else, you're not going to be able to have healthy relationships.
Yeah.
And if somebody doesn't support my self-care, that's a huge red flag.
Ooh, I love that. And I like hearing that. Gosh, if you don't do that, your relationships are just out of balance. Like they're totally out of balance if you're not checking in with self and making sure that self is okay, and you're always looking outward at other.
Right.
They're out of balance. So they can't be healthy.
Right. And I think for people who were like me in their codependency, that can be a motivating factor, because if I know that my self-care is going to benefit my relationships, I'm all over it.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, that saying no thing, when you talk about being selfish, it's like when I started saying no, most people didn't even care. They were like, oh, you don't want to do that? All right. Yeah. And on to the next thing. And I was like, you mean I sweated for a month over that? But most people don't even care.
They don't.
So if
you can't go to dinner? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe next time. And it's like, what? I know what that feels like. Like, oh my God, they're going to be so mad at me if I don't say yes. I got to come. I remember in my 20s and 30s, even, like, I would just lie. I'm like, I would make things up because I'm like, I couldn't say no.
Right.
And I'd come up with these crazy ass stories. Like my husband would be like, why don't you just tell me you can't go? Oh no, if I do that there's a risk they're going to be mad at me.
Right.
And then I started practicing, and I realized people like you said, like they just don't really care. Oh, you can't come to the party? Okay. You can't go to the whatever? It's okay. They didn't care. Right. They didn't care.
So imagine if self-care is totally fine and the people in your life actually support you in doing it.
And by the way, if someone doesn't support you when you're really taking care of yourself, maybe they shouldn't be in your life anymore. That is what I realized too. I'm like, hello, I'm getting healthy here. You don't like it? Step off. Maybe it's not, maybe it shouldn't be part of my circle anymore. So,
yeah. Well, that's the hard part in recovery is sometimes we outgrow people.
Absolutely. And we do. And people that are listening, I'm letting you know ahead of time, you will outgrow people.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. Sure. You just will, because you're as you get healthier, you will attract healthier people into your circle. It doesn't mean you have to get rid of people, but what I found is people just weren't a match anymore. I'm like, something's off here, and I don't know what it is. And it was fine. It didn't have to end in a big fight, by the way. It was just like, I just don't have a resonance with that person anymore, and it's totally okay. Moving on, and all is well.
Right.
So,
right. And that's where I think our anger is a gift, because our anger is going to tell us where somebody is overstepping or where somebody is not treating us well. And that's, for the codependent person, being able to really honor that is going to tell you whether or not, the relationship can be sustainable.
So true. Awesome. Thank you, Michelle Farris.
This was great.
Yeah. So how can people find you if they want to learn more about you?
So my website is counselingrecovery.com. And so is my Facebook page. So is my Instagram. Everything's Counseling Recovery. Okay. And I have lots of free resources on there. I just, it isn't out yet, but it will be by the time this airs. I created a relationship checklist of all relationship behaviors to kind of assess where your relationships are. Because I know for me, I had a really hard time doing that. So sometimes a lot of my work comes out of my own experience. I'm sure that's probably similar for you.
Are you kidding? All of my work comes out of my experience.
Yeah.
Yes, if my childhood was not such a train wreck, I'd have nothing to talk about right now.
Oh my gosh.
So I can talk about codependency. I've lived it. So it's a gift and it's a blessing for sure. Awesome. I will put all this in the show notes, and that's it. Thank you, dear.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. We really appreciate you being on. Thank you. Thank you. Have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.